this is my review of Sonic the Hedgehog. Okay, so I'll openly admit this took a bit of a while to do a review on because my sister went to go see it with her boyfriend on opening day, which happened to be Valentine's Day. I wasn't allowed to come for obvious reasons, and then because my sister was busy, she wasn't able to go with me subsequent days, so I eventually decided to make plans to go with my mom. But then the coronavirus thing happened, and then we got stuck inside, and then I found out they released it, but then we found out it cost a lot of money to rent it, and then eventually my sister wound up being able to find it on a website, so we just watched it there. But I finally watched Sonic the Hedgehog is my point, and it was worth the wait. It is one of the better video game movies I've seen. Then again, you can count the number of good video game movies on one hand, so not much of a ringing endorsement there, but it is a really good movie. So if you aren't familiar with Sonic the Hedgehog, I think everybody knows who Sonic is at this point, because I've not only played several of his games, but I've also reviewed his anime series a little bit, and I'm in the process of reviewing it as I'm recording this. If you're watching this in the future, I most likely have long since stopped recording it and reviewing that, but either way, I've talked about Sonic a lot on this channel, so I think everybody has a good idea of who Sonic is at this point. And most people watching this probably know who Sonic is anyway, because he's kind of a big icon in the video game world. He's been around since the early 90s, and has kind of been one of the bigger, more successful franchises out there. So he's kind of a big deal, and he's getting his own movie before Mario, technically, because Mario did have a movie, but as I said, it wasn't very good. So yeah, and this movie does a couple of interesting things with the lore of Sonic, which is kind of cool to see, and also kind of interesting to see how they decide to tackle Sonic lore in this movie. So it starts off with Sonic living on Mobius as a little kid, but because he has a unique ability and he was supposed to be hiding it and didn't because he's Sonic, he accidentally wound up getting the Echidna tribe involved, and they came after him at his home village, at which point he was given a bag of magic rings that enable him to transport himself to other worlds, and he uses it to find a safe world from time to time, and has been basically nomadic for however long. He's now a young adult, I think, in terms of Sonic lore. So he's been around for a while. He's at the same age Sonic is now in the games. So safe to say he's been around he's been nomadic for quite a while. But eventually he did set up in a little town called Green Hills, Montana, which is a town in Montana, and he kind of isn't allowed to interact with any of the people there because, as I said, he has to hide his powers or he'll be tracked down by whatever entities live there that are trying to steal his powers. So he kind of has to avoid people, but that has a bit of a toll on him in that he's very lonely. So the closest thing he has to a best friend is Tom Wachowski and his wife Millie, whom he doesn't know personally and refers to as Donut Lord because Tom likes donuts, and Animal Lady because Millie's a veterinarian. So he has code names for them, but he himself doesn't know any of the people except for one named Crazy Carl, who isn't as crazy as he sounds. So Carl is considered Crazy Carl because he's the only one who has ever seen Sonic, and he's trying to tell the rest of the town about it, but they dismiss him because they don't think that Sonic is actually real, because Sonic does a pretty good job of hiding, as I've established. So Crazy Carl is pretty much the only person who actually knows that Sonic is living in their sleepy little town. So yeah, eventually, Sonic is slowly becoming more and more lonely because the only person he has for comfort is Crazy Carl, and if the only person you know personally is a guy named Crazy Carl, you're probably not doing something right. But Sonic notably lives alone in a cave. He's upset he's kind of upset that he has no friends, and it takes a toll on him when he decides to play a game of baseball after watching a baseball game, but he plays the entire game by himself at night, which makes him a little bit sad, and he decides to run off his being upset. But this inadvertently sets off a huge explosion because of how his powers work, which knocks out quite a substantial part of the power grid, to the point where it's believed to be a terrorist attack by the U.S. government, who decide to try and figure out what he is, and send in their resident expert on the subject, Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. So, yeah, Jim Carrey is just kind of like... Jim Carrey was made for this character, because the thing about Dr. Robotnik is that he's a very eccentric character, and Jim Carrey is a very eccentric actor, so naturally the two are a great fit. But, yeah, not even the government likes Dr. Robotnik. As they point out, he's a bit eccentric, but they decide to use him to find Sonic anyway, because while he is eccentric and a bit of an abrasive asshole, because he's Dr. Robotnik, despite that, he's the smartest person they have available, and they realize they really don't have much of a choice. But Dr. Robotnik is quickly established to not have much faith in humans. As throughout the movie we find out a little bit about this version of Dr. Robotnik's backstory, about how he was an orphan, he got bullied a lot in school because of how smart he was, and eventually he turned to machines to even the odds, and put said bully in a neck brace and forced him to slurp for their straw for a year. So, yeah, Dr. Robotnik is not firing on all cylinders. He's a little crazy, but then again, he's Dr. Robotnik. I think everybody expects him to be a little bit crazy. But in any case, he uses his robots and quickly tracks down Sonic after seeing some of his footprints using his various robots, which I should point out are very egg-shaped. And that comes into play later when he finally gets the name Dr. Eggman from Sonic. So yeah, he uses his egg-shaped robots to track down Sonic, and Sonic, realizing that he needs to flee, tries to grab only the essentials, but he doesn't want to leave any of his stuff behind, and spends too much time trying to figure out what he actually needs to bring with him. And eventually he realizes, I need to leave, I'll come back for my stuff. So he leaves, goes to Tom's garage to hide, who at this point is considering going to San Francisco for a new job, because it's established very quickly that he really has seen much action in a long time, and in all honesty, he's getting kind of bored with it. He's been the sheriff for a long time, he's getting bored with it, and decides to move to San Francisco for a bit of change of pace. In fact, the closest thing he's had to excitement in a long while is, of course, Sonic. And sure enough, when he finally meets Sonic face to face, he's a little confused as to who he is and what he's doing there, and accidentally shoots him with a tranquilizer dart, which was in all of the trailers prior to this movie. But Sonic accidentally drops one of his rings while trying to determine where to go, and accidentally drops a ring, because San Francisco was the last thing on his mind before leaving, because Tom was wearing a San Francisco sweatshirt, he accidentally drops his rings in a tower in San Francisco, and now he has no way to leave Earth. So, but in any case, Tom decides to restrain Sonic in a dog crate while he tries to piece together what exactly is going on with him. But eventually, Dr. Robotnik tracks Sonic down to his house after Sonic explains the situation and what's going on. Tom decides to help him by stashing Sonic in the attic while he deals with Robotnik, and while he is initially successful, he's able to prove that Robotnik is in fact not who he says he is, when Robotnik pretends to be part of the electric company. All things take a turn for the worse when Sonic is suddenly tracked down by his drones, which Robotnik sends out without anybody's noticing, because all of his stuff is wired into his suit. But he sends his drones to look for Sonic. Sonic, who is hiding in the attic, panics and falls out of the attic and into the kitchen. And Dr. Robotnik, after realizing something is up, goes in to investigate. And while he initially doesn't find anything, he eventually finds one of Sonic's quills, which Tom picked up a while back, and realizes that Sonic is most likely there. So he quickly pieces together that Tom knows something and uses one of his robots to threaten Tom. But then Sonic startles Robotnik because Robotnik doesn't know who Sonic is at this point, and he isn't really entirely sure what he is. All he knows is that it's a weird thing, it shouldn't exist, and he freaks out. And that's when Tom takes the opportunity to sock him in the jaw, which unfortunately sets in the self-defense mechanisms on Dr. Robotnik's robot, which tries to shoot Sonic and Tom, but they eventually knock it out of the sky through combined antics and escape in Tom's car. At which point Robotnik calls in his human assistants, who he doesn't really like very much, and proceeds to chase after Sonic with his mini robots. At which point Tom and Sonic realize they kind of need each other because Tom can't go home because Robotnik will be looking for him, and Sonic doesn't know where he's going, and all he knows is that he needs to go to San Francisco, and he doesn't know where that is. So the two reluctantly decide to become friends and team up to go and find out where San Francisco is. So they go on a road trip to San Francisco, and eventually they stop at a gas station to refuel and also calls in at Green Hills to see what's going on. So Tom leaves Sonic in the car to go make a call back to his buddy Wade at the police station, but Sonic leaves in the middle of that after seeing how fun the biker bar next door is. Tom is immediately confronted by Dr. Robotnik, who has been staking out the police station, picks up the police station phone, and once Wade establishes that, yes, this is the guy you're looking for, I'm sorry I betrayed you, Tom, and then hands it off to Robotnik. And Robotnik threatens Tom through the phone, which is where we find out that he was bullied as a child and put a guy in a neck brace that caused him to slurp through a straw for a year. But Tom hangs up and goes back to the car, finds out Sonic isn't there, and goes looking for him in the biker bar. At which point he points out that they're not really on much of a road trip and can't really spend time checking things off of Sonic's bucket list. At which point Sonic points out he doesn't really know what a bucket list is, so Tom explains to him what a bucket list is, about how it's things that you want to do before you die, and Sonic realizes, well, I've got a lot of things I want to do before I leave Earth, and I really don't think I have the time. So Tom realizes, well, we can check off a couple of those things on our list, and sure enough, they do several of the things on Sonic's list, but then Sonic and Tom accidentally start a bar fight because some of the guys there don't like Sonic and Tom hanging around, and Sonic, a la Quicksilver moment from X-Men, ends the fight in an instant, and they leave, and the two of them leave. So Robotnik does eventually track them to the bar while they're staying in a hotel, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and trying to wrap their head around how are we going to get to San Francisco now if Robotnik knows where we are. So the two have a bit of a bonding moment, and with Sonic immediately wearing himself out and falling asleep because he kind of wore himself out trying to figure out all the different things that could be done in the apartment, in the small little hotel room that they're in, and immediately wears himself out. At which point Tom tucks him in, and sure enough, while they're on the road, Robotnik eventually finds out that they were stopped at the bar, and gets information out of one of the guys that Sonic attacked, and then surmises that maybe they need to go look at where he is. So Robotnik, being Robotnik, immediately triangulates where they are on the road and where they're heading, and sends a tank after them. So Sonic and Tom are just kind of bonding a little bit in the scene. Sonic explains that, hey, I checked off a couple of things off my bucket list. What's some of the things on your bucket list, Tom? And sure enough, Tom responds that the only real thing he wants to do is move to San Francisco, become a B cop there, and try to live a more dangerous life because he doesn't feel like he's seeing enough action as a cop in Green Hills. And sure enough, while it is a dream that Tom has, Sonic is a bit appalled and disgusted that Tom would want to leave his peaceful little town, pointing out that the only thing that really should matter is Tom wanting to protect the people he loves, and nothing else should matter to him. It doesn't matter that Green Hills is a typical sleepy town where nothing really happens except for Crazy Carl ranting about Sonic, but their conversation is interrupted when Robotnik's tank finally shows up and harpoons their dashboard, at which point they try to face off against Dr. Robotnik's tank, and Sonic, because of how his powers work and how they go kind of out of control, destroys the tank, but then it becomes a smaller tank, which they then destroy, which then becomes an even smaller tank, which they then destroy, which then becomes a little RC helicopter, which cuts the entire top off of their car, and then becomes a bomb, and Sonic and Tom have to chuck it. And they do successfully get rid of the bomb, but Sonic is caught in the blast and injured. So they have to now go track down Millie, who is staying with her sister, and notably Sonic and Tom aren't welcome because they're kind of fugitives at this point. It's been all over the news up to this point, and now that they're out, and now that they're arriving at Tom's sister-in-law's house, who I should mention does not like Tom, and now has a good reason to not like Tom because he's kind of a fugitive. So they don't really like him all that much. But they go to stop by Millie's house so that Millie can take a look at Sonic and figure out what's wrong with him and try to help him get back to full health. So they go to her house. So they go to her house, and again, they're not really happy to see her, except for his little niece JoJo, who is very happy to see her uncle. They go to visit their family, and they wind up tying up the sister-in-law in her living room because she was probably going to call the cops, and also she fainted, so it kind of presented itself an opportunity. Meanwhile, Robotnik is very upset about the fact that his tank didn't work, but after finding out that that the quill he has from Sonic actually contains electric properties, has begun to run experiments on it, and eventually finds out that has a bit of an unlimited energy source, and uses it to power his prototype drone thing, his egg piloting thing. You know, it looks a bit more drone-like in this version of the film, but it's still the same vehicle. And sure enough, he uses it to power his new plane toy that he's been working on for a long time, and didn't have a sufficient power source to run. So he straps it into his new flying machine and sets off to go fight Sonic. Meanwhile, Sonic has since woken up after inhaling some smelling salts that Millie provided, and he bounces off the walls for a bit and panics about where he is. At which point he and Millie are finally introduced to one another by Tom, and she and Tom leave into the other room to discuss what Sonic is. Discuss, as in heavy air quotes. Meanwhile, JoJo, seeing how beat up Sonic's sneakers are, comes back with his signature pair of red sneakers, which up to this point he hasn't had. He's been wearing these beat up, scuffed up sneakers that he's had since he was little, and they're kind of worn out. So he definitely was in need of some new sneakers. And Sonic is so happy to have not only made a friend with a little girl, but also to have received a gift. And he spends the rest of his visit there actually playing with JoJo, which is kind of cute. But in any case, now that Millie has been caught up to speed, they leave in her sister's car, which her sister kind of can't object to because she's kind of tied up. And they finally arrive at San Francisco, where they find out that where Sonic's rings are, which are on top of one of the tallest buildings in San Francisco. I don't know all the buildings in San Francisco. All I know is that there's a big one that they have to climb, and Tom uses his police badge to sneak into the tower with Sonic in a gym bag, which is one of the funniest scenes. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie, and I do recommend watching the movie just for this scene. It is in the trailers. It's very funny. But in any case, Sonic arrives at the top of the tower with Tom and Millie, and he finds his bag of rings, and prepared to say a heartfelt goodbye to Tom, whom he's become best friends with over the course of their journey, and is about to leave through one of the rings, but then Robotnik shows up with all of his robots and in his new flying machine, wearing his signature red suit that he's usually shown wearing. Because up to this point he's been wearing a trench coat. But he's wearing his signature flight suit, as he puts it. But he shows up with his signature goggles and flight suit and is prepared to throw down with Sonic. And Sonic kind of throws Millie and Tom off of the building to save them, knowing full well that he'll be able to use the same trick he did with the Quicksilver scene from earlier to save them. But then he's thrown for a bit of the loop when Robotnik is revealed to have harvested Sonic's energy and is able to keep up with him in the super time. So he's not able to. So Sonic quickly realizes that he isn't able to outrun Eggman, who is now being called Eggman constantly by Sonic at this point. But he realizes that he's not able to outrun Robotnik. Throws a ring behind Millie and Tom and that sends them back to Green Hills. And then proceeds to go on a chase scene through various different countries, eventually winding up in Green Hill, and Sonic is unable to outrun Robotnik and gets badly injured. So at which point, Eggman decides to gloat, as he's known to do. He decides to gloat over the fact that he's beaten Sonic, and he's going to use his powers to take over the world and harvest his energy to figure out what exactly makes him tick. But as he's monologuing, Tom uses one of the rings which Sonic dropped to land on top of Eggman's carrier, and proceeds to get into a fist fight with him, which goes a lot better than you would expect, but he still gets thrown out of the vehicle anyway, and Eggman is very keen on killing Tom and Sonic up to this point, because they've been a pain in the ass for the entire movie. They've been a pain in his ass for pretty much the whole thing. So they're not exactly his most likable people now. But then, because they saw their sheriffs try to beat Eggman, actually gang up to face off against Eggman, and take up arms to try and stop him. Crazy Carl, of course, picks up a giant chainsaw, and he's which is one of the funnier exceptions because it's completely in his character. But they're going to fight, but everybody is prepared to attack him. And even Tom says something emotional about how even though Sonic may not have been from their Earth, he was still more human than Eggman will ever be. And sure enough, as Sonic finally wakes up, and then steals the rest of his power from the quill that's in Eggman's carrier and absorbs it into himself. I'm not entirely sure how that works. But just go with it. And then proceeds to use his full power to thrash down Eggman, and with the combined efforts of Tom and Sonic, he goes through a portal to the Mushroom World, which is where Sonic was planning to go, but realized that it's more important for him to defend the people that are close to him, and sure enough decides to stay on Earth to become a protector of sorts. So he decides to become a full-time superhero and protect Green Hills from supervillains like Dr. Eggman, who is revealed at the end of the film to be alive and well, but stuck in the Mushroom World. But he's stuck. But after that, Tom is no longer a fugitive. So the government gives him a formal apology. They send the general in person to apologize to Tom, pointing out that it's most likely because it was Eggman who put out the APB on Tom, and now that Eggman, technically speaking, is considered no longer existing by the government, they decide to call off the APB and give him a gift card to Olive Garden as thanks. I mean, it seems kind of lackluster because it's the government, but then again, as the guy points out, have you ever tried their Endless Pasta Bowl, as he puts it? He says that the Endless Pasta Bowl is basically one of the highest honors that the government can give, and I kind of find that hilarious. And it's also revealed that Sonic has since moved in with Tom and Millie, with them having moved all of his stuff into the attic, so now he lives with them, which is kind of cute. So now he lives So now he lives with them, and he's just kind of happy to have friends and a family now. He hasn't had a family in a long time. He had a mother figure, but she died almost immediately, so she's kind of not relevant to the movie after that. So the closest thing he now has is Tom and Millie, who he now lives with. So it's kind of a cute ending. But there is implications that there's going to be a sequel because, as I said, Robotnik is trapped in the mushroom world and is slowly losing what's left of his sanity. He's shaved off his head and is rocking his signature bushy mustache that he usually has. Which is with the implication being that now he's going to resemble Eggman a little more closely than he previously did. Because up to this point, he kind of just looked like Jim Carrey wearing a fake mustache, but now he looks like Dr. Eggman. He has the big red suit. He has the red suit. He has the big bushy mustache. He has a bald head, and also has befriended a rock which he named Agent Stone after his assistant, who he frequently mocks throughout the entire movie. And Agent Stone kind of isn't really relevant to the plot or anything. He's just a human that follows Eggman around, and that's really his only role in the movie. He doesn't really play any substantial part in it. Eggman is trapped in the mushroom world, but it's implied that he will eventually return. And also, there's a post-credit scene of Tails coming to Earth to find Sonic because he needs his help with something, implying that Tails and Dr. Eggman are going to be in the sequel if they ever make one. But the implication is that there is going to eventually be a sequel. They're planning to make a sequel. I don't know if there actually are. There might be a sequel, but it's implied that they're planning to make a sequel, and it's also entirely possible that they may not get the funding to make a sequel. I doubt that's the case, since as I said, it's actually one of the best video game movies I've seen. Again, not much of a ringing endorsement because most of them because there are 43 of them, and 40 of them have been terrible, which should tell you something. It took 40 movies to finally get to the point where we finally broke this curse of them being bad, and now we're actually getting good video game movies. But yeah, I think that we might get a sequel at some point. I don't know when, but it is heavily implied we're eventually going to be getting a sequel, and we're eventually going to see that. I may review it when it comes out. I don't know when it is, but it is going to be interesting seeing what they do for the sequel, because they've set up that the villain is planning to come back at some point because he's Dr. Eggman. He's smart. He'll figure it out, and as he says, he'll be home by Christmas, which implies that it may be a Christmas release at some point. And also Tails is now going to be involved in the sequel, which is going to be interesting. So I do think that they are planning to make a sequel. That seems obvious, but overall, I did like the movie. I felt like the movie was pretty good. It felt like it was good as a standalone thing, but the fact that it's a sequel means that it may wind up becoming a successful movie franchise if they play their cards right. Considering how good this first one was, it's entirely possible to make another one that's equally good. But I honestly have no idea. I honestly have no idea how the second film is going to play out. All I know is that they have a sequel planned. I might review it at some point. Hopefully it's as good as this one. But in any case, yeah, that was my review of the Sonic movie. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!